Hello, this is Angela Anderson. Thanks for joining me for this acrylic painting tutorial. In this video, I'm going to be showing you how to paint a simple chair with some flowers in it. And we're going to go over some beginner basics tonight and add to this is our third in our beginner basics series. So I'll show you step by step how to do this project from start to finish. I've got my husband Mark with me.
Hey there, everybody.
He's man in chat tonight. So if you've got questions, you can ask those while we're painting and I'll try to answer them. Let's get started. Alrighty, so I'm going to be using a 9 by 12 inch canvas today. This is the Fredrix mixed media canvas board. I would suggest if you're going to be using a palette knife for doing some of the textured techniques that we're going to be doing, that you use a hard surface board. It just works a little bit better than the canvases can be kind of wobbly when you're trying to use a knife or a credit card or something like that to scrape. So we can do it without that part though, so if you only have regular canvases, don't worry about that. I'll just show you how to do some different techniques. So the first lesson that we did in this beginner series, we kind of went over some basic blending with two colors for the background and did some line work. And then in our second series, we did more blending with several colors and showed how to do some very simple clouds and how to use a traceable. And then this week, we're going to be working on using texture and creating textured backgrounds, doing some dry brushing and creating some simple florals, and some leaves and things like that. So we'll have several things to do tonight. So let's get going here. You're going to want a large brush for the background, something kind of medium sized for the chair. And I'm not sure if I'll need this 10 bright, but I grabbed it just in case. I've got a 6 and a 10 bright. Those are the Summit series. This one's the Aspen series 2-inch Mottler. And then I've got a 1/4 inch 3/8 inch angle, a 1/4 inch and 3/8 inch blender, and then a 10-aught fan brush. Just any fan brush will do. Stiff bristles are better, so they give us a little texture. And then I've got a short liner and a number 4 round. So use what brushes that you have. These are all Princeton brushes. They're a brush sponsor. The red handles are their Velvet Touch line. The blue are their Select. But all of their brushes are really great. Fredrix is our canvas sponsor, so thank you to both of them for providing our materials. And you're also going to want either a palette knife of some sort or a scraper tool. So just a regular credit card will work. And then I'm going to show you, I'm not going to use this modeling paste on the project. I'm just going to kind of show you on a separate board how it would look and kind of what to do because it takes a while to dry. So we don't have time for that. Nobody got time for that. All right, let's go over colors. I got burnt umber, burnt sienna, cadmium, yellow, medium, and light. Just use whatever yellows you have, though. This one is Phthalo green, yellow shade, ultramarine blue, and then this is unbleached titanium and titanium white. So just kind of an off-white color, a white. Really, again, use what colors that you have. I would say ultramarine blue and burnt umber are the two main colors that we're going to be used for our gray, but you could also just use black and white for your gray if you don't have those colors. So, all right, let's get going here. I'm going to start out by just using my large flat to cover my background with some darker gray, and then we're going to scrape some lighter gray over the top. So let's go ahead and use this one. And I'm going to mix up quite a bit of this gray. So I'm going to grab about half of my burnt umber here and about half of my ultramarine blue. Let me see if I can grab it this way. There we go. And there's maybe a little bit more of the ultramarine or the burnt umber than the ultramarine blue. The gray and yellow that we're doing today are kind of like semi nod toward the Pantone colors of the year. So I'm going to make our background more gray than it is in our photograph. It's kind of more of a ivory color, kind of an off-white. So we're going to make it more gray than our photograph. All right, and so this is my favorite gray, this burnt umber and ultramarine blue. And the reason it's my favorite is because I can make it warm or I can make it cool. And that just is kind of artsy terms for kind of how close to, well, cool colors are like purple, blue, and some greens. And then your warm colors are red, orange, yellow. So we're going to go a little bit warmer on this, which the burnt umber is the warmer side of this gray. So if we add just a little bit more of that color, we'll get a warmer gray. And if we add more of the blue, which is ultramarine blue, is a very kind of purpley blue. It's close to the purple tones. It's very cool blue and cool in tone. And it makes a really kind of nice blue gray if you add a little bit extra of that to this color. So I'm going to go ahead and use a little bit of my unbleached titanium here too while I've got this out. And I'm just using what's left over on my knife. I'm not adding any extra color to this. I'm just gonna use what's on my knife here. And this is a warm white. So this white will go towards that warm side. Like I was saying, we're trying to make a warm gray. And this is the Pantone color of the year. They actually had 2 colors of the year this year. It was Ultimate Gray, I think it's called, and Illuminated, I believe, or Illuminating. I don't know. I need to look those up. Will you look them up for me, honey? The exact names. Basically, a nice medium gray and a yellow. So that was our, I should have had those written down.
I'm not listening to you.
Okay.
I just caught up.
Oh, okay.
So what am I looking up?
The Pantone colors of the year for
Check.
2021.
I will do that.
I just need to know the names. I know they're a gray and a yellow. I just don't remember the names. Okay, so that's good enough. So what I'm going to do is use this brush. I'm just going to pull off this color off this knife so I don't waste any of this paint. Got all this nice color on here. And I'm going to grab a little bit of the darker. So I've got a dark tone and a light tone. And what I'm going to do is create kind of a mid-tone with both of these. And use this, a little bit extra water. And I'm going to go ahead and spray my canvas just a little bit. Don't need a lot of water here. You don't want your canvas to be soupy wet because otherwise the paint won't stick very well to it. But having a little bit of water on there will help it absorb a little bit better. So you kind of just want it slightly damp. All right, so I'm going to keep on going here. Look at how nice that gray is. Very pretty. I think we got it. Very good tone to it. If you put it on and you're like, oh, that looks too blue, or it looks too brown, and you can add a little bit more blue if it looks too brown, or add a little bit of brown if it looks too blue. So, but I really don't think you can go wrong with this mixture. It's very user-friendly. Okay. And even if it's a little bit more blue than mine, it's going to be fine. It's not going to make a difference. So don't stress out about this. Just slap that paint on there.
So what are you wanting to know about the gray?
The names. The name of the gray and the yellow.
The gray and the yellow.
Yeah, I just want to know that you obviously didn't listen to me at all when I asked you.
No, I was listening and checking levels to make sure people could hear you.
Okay. Pantone colors of the year. Yes. I just need to know the
so
names.
So they're Pantone Ultimate Gray.
Ultimate Gray. Okay, that's what I think I said.
And a Pantone Illuminating.
Illuminating. Okay, I wasn't sure if it was illuminated or illuminating. Illuminating. Okay.
It's the 13-0647 to be
fine.
technically.
Thank you.
That sounds like engineer stuff. That sounds more interesting to me.
You want the technical?
Well, yeah, because that means so much to everybody.
Yeah. I think those are the terms if you're doing it on a computer, or maybe, I don't know.
Oh, yeah, if you want to set your colors in your app or program. Interesting.
Right. All right, so I'm going to use this knife, and I don't think I want to use this. I think I want to use an offset knife, because what is happening is I want to go pretty flat with it. If I use a flat knife like this, I'm going to touch it as I work. So I'm going to use an offset knife that's got a little bit of a curve here. And I'm just going to smooth out. I'm using this light color. Decided to add a little bit more of the white to it. This gray is still wet. It's fine. I can use it while it's wet. It's going to kind of blend with it a little bit, but it'll be fine. If you want to, you can dry it completely and then do this. It's either way. So I've smoothed out my paint on my palette, and then I've just kind of scraped through it on one side of this. It's still kind of glopped on that side too. And I'm just going to basically smooth this on and just create some texture, but leave a little bit of that background color showing. So, and depending on how you do it, so if you swirl it, you might get a little different kind of texture on it. This is really fun. It's very individual. So depending on how you're holding the knife and what kind of knife you're using and how hard you press, and I'm not pressing hard at all. I'm just letting the paint kind of scrape onto the canvas here because I don't want to scrape off my dark gray. So I'm just going to keep on doing this. And this stucco that I'm seeing on our photograph is kind of got, they've probably smoothed it on like this where the shadow is kind of underneath, so it's kind of facing downward a little bit. So I'm just going to keep on going here, and you can see I'm already running out of my light color, so I'm going to have to mix up some more of it. And when Mark takes this to dry, I'll show you how to use the texture mediums. So, and I can even kind of pucker it by kind of lifting through. You see how that's creating texture on the canvas there. All of this, it's totally up to you. You could do it more smoothly. You could do it like we did the first week where we did that gray with the sponge and smooth it on a little bit smoother with a sponge. So it's totally up to you, your project. You can do what you like with it. Just kind of showing you an option here, and I'm mixing that unbleached titanium with the titanium white here to get a gray that's close to what I've already got on here. Again, just kind of running it on here, but also making sure that I'm leaving plenty of spots like this where that dark gray is showing through, because that's what's going to give it a little bit of character. So after I put it on, I can kind of scrape back through and push it in a certain direction. I could scrape the whole thing up and down if I wanted to, just however you want to do, whatever kind of texture you want to create in here. While this paint is wet, it'll kind of move around a little bit for you. But again, I'm not pressing very hard because I don't want to pull off my color. And I can also get the darker and have a little bit of the darker on here, and maybe add a little bit of that in some places. So I have a third color in here. But I would go sparingly with the darker color there because it's going to really show up. All right, just mixing a little bit more of this, working quickly because this is going to dry fairly quickly on my palette here, so I want to use it while it's still wet. And most of this is going to get covered up by our chair, so not too worried. Mostly the parts that are going to show are these outer edges, the corners and the outer parts. Most of this middle area is going to be covered by chair and flowers and things, but I still want to take my time and do a good job on it. Okay, so at the very end here, I'm going to take some more of that white and just mix it through whatever I've got left on this area over here that's got the kind of lighter gray. So I'm making a much brighter whitish highlight. And this one, just like the black, darker tone, we're going to use it very sparingly. This time I'm just going to barely touch it. And if your paint is starting to feel sticky, you can just stop and dry it completely. Or if it's starting to kind of like pull away from the canvas or something like that, something weird, just stop, let it dry completely, and then come back and do this over the top. It'll go over the top of the dried paint just fine. So it'll still do the same thing. What it's going to do is kind of catch in all this raised texture, and actually probably be even a little bit easier to get the texture when you go over the top of the dried paint. But I want to only have to dry it once, so I'm not going to do that.
We have a question.
Okay.
The person said that they have some mediums that have a like a texture in them. Could they use that?
That's what I'm going to show after this. Yeah.
They're like,
Yep.
they have ESPN too. They're that psychic.
Yeah, while you're drying this, I'm going to show them how to use the texture mediums.
I always miss the good stuff.
Oh no, sorry. Okay, so that's good enough, I think. I'm liking that. It's got 3 different tones. We've got the medium in the background, the mid-tone most places, and then the very little bit of the highlights showing, and that's going to be good enough, I think. I'm going to let Mark take that and dry it really well. And while my paint is still wet here, I'm going to make sure that I clean up my brush and I'm just taking the paint off of my brush. I'm picking up a little bit of water and just trying to get the paint mostly out of my brush. And that way I'm not, with these big brushes, I would end up muddying up my whole water thing by trying to clean this big brush. So just by kind of wiping it off first, it'll do better. And then I'm just going to set it off to the side here on my paper towel until I can clean it. And I did show last week also, I forgot to mention, I showed how to clean the brushes at the very end of the video. So if you wonder about that, you can check out the end for how to clean your brushes. Alrighty. So on to the different pastes. So I've got 3 different pastes here. I've got coarse modeling paste, I've got fiber paste, and I've got fine pumice gel. So they all have a different texture, but they all basically are the same thing. They're just going to add that texture to your piece. And the fine pumice gel is probably going to be the smoothest, I think, of all of them. It does really well with things like stencils. So if you want to like set down a stencil and then you can smooth this over, see how nice and smooth this is. But look how beautiful that is. And then if we left this to dry and then painted over it, we'd get all this nice texture up underneath it. We would paint over it just the same way, or we could even just paint a light wash of color over the top and it would still catch in all these crevices and things that we have here. So that's one option, is that light modeling paste, fine pumice gel. You can see that that's probably my favorite because most of it's gone out of there. And then this one is a fiber paste. So it's got like little bits of fiber and maybe paper, not really sure, kind of like almost like a paper mache texture. If you've ever used that paper mache that's kind of grayish. So that's kind of that texture there. It's got a little bit more body to it. Definitely thicker. You can still get it fairly fine, but when you get it fine, it doesn't break up the way that this one does. I feel like it kind of sticks together. So you're kind of creating the texture with your knife. So you can kind of push through it and scrape out some areas that are a little bit thinner and create your texture that way. You can kind of push through it like that. If you do that, it kind of raises it up little peaks like that. You can also smooth over it with a little bit of water. So if you got too much of the peaks there and you just kind of want to smooth it out, you can take just a little bit of water and smooth over it, and it'll push down those peaks and make it a little bit smoother to work with. So, and you can also add paint to any of these colors. So we can use that the gray in this because this is a white. It's going to dry this color. This one dries pretty much clear. This one is going to dry kind of white because I think it's got that texture in it. I believe this one dries white. Let me make sure. And then the coarse modeling paste, I can't remember, molding paste, I'm sorry. Molding paste. It's very similar to the fiber paste, but it's a little bit smoother. See how that, it's kind of more like grains of sand in there. You can hear it. You can even hear it kind of. So this is probably the closest to like our stucco texture. And this is going to probably break up like our texture that stucco would. So those are 3 different options there. And again, I would pretty much put them on just the same way we did the paint. So just using your palette knife and just pushing it around and creating, just play with it. Create your little textures and then let this dry. It's going to have to dry overnight before you can paint over it. But if you add paint to it, then it'll save you a step. But you won't, I mean, depending on how many colors you use with it, you'll still probably want to at least go over it with your like highlight color. All right, even after you've got your texture on there. So, all right. I don't know which way I have it. It doesn't matter. Actually, that way. There's the words on the back. Oh, I forgot to show this. So the credit card, you're going to do it the same way. So you're going to use it. I'm just going to use it over here a little bit. And actually probably would use it on its flat end over here. Scrape it up just like we did before. And then just run it on here and smooth it out. And because we're kind of holding it, it's flexible, so it's going to flex and we won't get our hand in it. And you can pretty much use it just like we did this knife. Just run it through, get that little bead of paint on one side of it, and then push it through and scrape it onto your canvas. So you don't have to run out and get a fancy palette knife if you're new to painting. You can just use an old credit card or something. All right, so hopefully, I know I went over those pretty quickly, but I believe both the coarse molding paste and the fiber paste maybe dries a little bit. I don't know, actually. I need to look that up. I should know that, but I don't know offhand if they dry white or not. They might not dry white. They might dry clear because they might have a clear, the binder might be white, but if I'm trying to see if you can look it up on Golden's website for me, honey. Thank you. All right. So while he's looking that up, sorry I didn't look that up ahead of time. I just didn't even think about it. Our chair is going to fit in right about here. So we're just going to draw it on freehand. This is going to be a very simplified chair. We're not going to go into super detail, make it super realistic looking. This is just going to be kind of a easy, fun project for beginners. So don't leave me any comments about being simple. I get comments sometimes that are like, that looks amateurish. And I'm like, yeah, because it's for beginners. Like it's for, oh, anyhow. People just like to be very judgy with art. It's a thing. All right. So our chair seat is going to be about the quarter mark. So if you find your halfway mark and then find your quarter mark, that's about where our chair seat is going to be. And we're going to come in just a little bit from the edge. So right about in there, and then come out to just past the halfway mark. So right in here somewhere. All right. So I'm just going to put my lines there, and then it's going to go back in. It's going to angle in a little bit, but we're not actually seeing this part because it's all going to be covered by the bits of greenery and things. But I'm going to go ahead and do my 2 lines parallel and just making a big seat there, right? Big rectangle. And I might use my chalk pencil. Let me see if I can get I just don't want to draw too hard. And it's going to be easier for you to see with the larger one. Okay, so then coming from down from below the chair seat, just inside a little bit, you're going to make the 2 legs, and they kind of taper a little bit out a little bit, so they kind of just slightly. It's probably too thick, but oh well. And then the outer legs are going to angle out this way. Okay, so there's these 2 are kind of a little closer than those ones. And then from here, I'm just going to angle up to almost the top of the canvas and do my slat on either side of my chair. Trying to kind of get these angles to be the same. There and there. And then come just up underneath that and just do a curved line like that. And this doesn't go quite up to the top of these, so just underneath those, even the top part of it. It's a little bit underneath. And then the bottom kind of curves slightly this way, like that. Okay.
I finally found it.
Okay, what does it say?
It says that for the molding paste that dries to a hard yet flexible opaque film
Okay.
and blends with colors to tint and extend paint.
Right. Okay. And then the model, that's the molding paste. What about the fiber
Yes.
paste?
Oh man, I thought that would be enough. You didn't forget, did you?
No. But I'm pretty sure it is the same probably. So it by when it says tint, that means it turns it a little bit white. So whatever color you mix with it, it'll lighten it just like a white would. Yeah, and then the pumice gel. I know the pumice gel, it dries kind of grayish a little bit, slightly gray, but it's more clear than any of the other two. You can already see it drying here where it's kind of gone clear. All right, let's get going here on our painting. So there's our drawing. Nothing too crazy.
Okay, it says that the fiber paste, when dry, has the appearance of handmade paper.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
The dry off-white color is
Off-white.
absorbent, making it ideal to use with acrylic washes.
Yes. Okay. All right. And by a wash, what they're saying is just thinning out your paint with a lot of water or gel medium or glazing medium or something like that, and then painting over the top of it. So you could take it, a painting that was all this, just like this. When it's dry, it's going to look very similar. And then you just paint over the top. It's going to be super absorbent, and it'll catch the darker color all in the little cracks and things. And that's what the wash will do with that. Okay, so let's get going here on our chair. So we've got our gray in the background. It's a little bit darker than our reference photo, quite a lot darker actually. So we may make our chair a little bit lighter or a little bit darker, even still than our reference photo. So either way we can do it. I'm looking at my photograph. I'm realizing that I need to bring my chair out a little bit because if you go straight down in our photograph, from the outer, the chair should be out a little bit from those. So I'm going to bring my chair out just a little bit and bring my legs out a little bit right here. And the nice thing about working with chalk is that you just erase it, comes right off. So I'm just going to move these out. So I'm going to come straight down and then move this out a little bit so that my chair matches the back part of it. It'll be much more natural looking. Okay, so just a little bit out. It doesn't have to be much, but just slightly out, and then our legs. Again, just slightly in from that outer edge with our legs. There and there, and then again right here and right here. Okay. All right, so I'm going to take my brown here. I'm going to add a little bit of this gray to it just to darken it up a little bit. And I'm going to use it on my chair seat and just pull down and just create kind of a dark streaked wood. And then where it kind of ends, I'm just going to kind of go across this way and sort of fill it in. You can turn it upside down so that you get a better angle at it. It's a little bit easier, I find, for right-handed to paint left to right. Not sure for left-handers, but I know for me. I'm just using that bottom edge there to straighten that out. Okay. Then up here, it's a little bit lighter. So I'm going to get a little bit lighter color, and I'm just going to mix it over here. And from the top here, I'm just going to pull. If it's too light, which it is, I can't see it against my dark gray. So I'm going to mix a little bit more of that darker color just so that it's more visible against that dark gray. And just like, again, most of this is not going to be showing. So I'm just filling in an area here where probably just a little tiny bit of this side is going to show. Okay, and then I'm going to use what's left in my brush here, maybe pull through just a little bit, maybe even get, no, I don't want the gray. I'm just going to come along this top here. This brown is still a little bit wet, and I'm just going to smooth out that transition. So it's like, basically it's just rounding out. And I'm just very lightly touching and dragging through the wet paint. It's okay, even if this was dry, it would still work the same. So even if the brown was dry, I'm just kind of brushing through it lightly. And then I'm gonna maybe even brush a little bit on the front side. I don't want too much though. Okay, so there we go. And I'm gonna make sure that this is nice and squared off right here and here. That looks good. So there's our first part of our chair. I'm going to get a little bit more of the brown, a little bit more of our darker color here. And I'm going to use this same brush, and I think I'm going to go ahead and use this. This is the 6 Bright. I think I'm going to use this as the width of my chair leg. So I'm just going to go straight down with it. And then I'm going to bring it out just a little bit at the bottom.
We have a question we get a moment.
Okay.
They would like to know if there's a good substitute brush for the one that you're using that has a shorter handle.
Yeah, I mean, you can use, you could use the angle brush. It would work. Or you know, a bright in the Velvet Touch makes brights.
I will award you 200 points for those answers.
Thank you. What do I win? What do I have to? How many points do I have to get to win a prize? What's the?
Well, you already won since you're married to me.
Is that okay? Check.
Don't sound
I'm
so
totally agreeing with you.
excited there.
I'm 100% agreeing with you.
Mm-hmm. I could tell by the excitement in your voice. You're like, oh, okay.
Okay, so just smoothing this out. Try not to overdo it. I tried to add the dark too soon, and it was just lifting. So we'll just let that set, and let's go ahead and work on our other legs. This time I'm going to grab a little bit of the burnt sienna. That's that kind of reddish tone in the wood. You can leave this out if you don't want to do the reddish tone. It's fine, but I'm going to go ahead and use it. I'm just going to use the edge of my brush and just kind of press down a little bit and bring it across, and then now, if this is not going on smoothly for you, what you can do is switch to your number 4 round and use that instead. Add a little bit more water to it than what you've got going on right now. So I've just added this is basically the burnt sienna and burnt umber together here. You can see when I'm mixing colors, I don't think I mentioned this. So what I'm doing is I'm not mixing it up in here. Like I want these two mixed up, but I'm not going to mix these whole things together. I'm just going to scoop up a little bit from the side and bring it to a new place. And then do the same thing with the burnt sienna and move it to a new place. And the tone of this, it doesn't really matter. Just get it to whatever color you like. It doesn't have to match mine. If you want less of the red tones, use more of the burnt umber. And then if you want a little bit darker, just grab some of your dark gray that you've got over here and add that to it. Okay. Then I've got this color on my brush here, and I'm actually going to kind of flatten out this number 4, and it'll kind of flatten it out like a flat brush would work, and just use it to paint that in. And you'll find if you have really thick texture on any of your background, you might have to go over that area like twice, because it may not kind of get in the little cracks right at first. So just kind of know that going in. When you paint over a textured area, it might act a little bit differently than another. All right, so there's our back legs. Again, not necessarily perfect. That's fine. I'm going to kind of fix it a little bit because I kind of got a little bit off. I find doing straight lines like this easier to do with a flat brush or an angle brush, but you know, you can kind of figure out what works for you.
Or you can just cover it up with flowers at the end.
True.
It will hide all those sins.
Right. Okay, so up here I'm going to get a little bit more of my unbleached titanium and make a little bit lighter color for the top part of my chair here. Oops, there's my dog crying to get in. I'm going to wash this out. He must be back from his walk. All right. Going over my chalk now. One thing with the chalk you'll find is it will kind of pick up and mess with your paint just a little bit. So just kind of know that. So I'm kind of going just inside my chalk lines just a little bit, maybe. All right, I think I curved that a little bit too much, but get the idea there. Yeah, it's not quite that dark, that far down. Let me see if I can get it off. I don't know. It might not come off. My background might be too... Nope, I can get it off. Okay, so kind of got an area here where I went too low on my bottom of that. So I'm just going to wipe it off very carefully. My background has to be completely dry for that to work. All right, so now I'm going to go back in here and just go some more straight with this. It's slightly curved, but it's not as curved as I had it. There we go. Much better. Okay. And then I've got my little rungs out the side. Now, my brush has not been hydrated in a while, and I can tell just by pulling through here, it feels like it's a little bit sticky, like it feels like it's dragging through the paint. So I'm just going to pick up just a little bit of water. Don't dunk your whole brush in there, because what you're going to do is just flood your brush. Your brush is going to get all this water trapped up in here, and then when you go down here, it's just going to all pool and puddle in your paint. Here, I'll do it over here so you can see what I'm saying. You see how much soupier that is than this. You don't want it, you can't really work with this kind of paint because it's just going to go on. It's not thick enough. So I'm going to add a little bit of my burnt umber. It's going to take it a minute to, I'm going to have to keep adding thicker and thicker paint to, there we go, to get enough paint to water ratio. You don't want your paint too soupy, otherwise it's just going to go on kind of see-through. Okay, that's good. I'm going to spray this because it's starting to dry. And spray a little bit of my paints there. Okay. And let's see. Yeah, I guess these are about the same width, maybe a little bit thinner. So I think I'm just going to use the edge of my brush this way and do these rungs this way. Just using that long edge of my brush, squaring that off at the top. Bringing it up to meet that. And then trying to get about the same width all the way down. Using that flat edge of this brush will help me keep my straight line. Okay. Go a little bit darker with this. I'm going to get a little bit of that darker color. While this is wet, I'm just going to go ahead and kind of go back over this with some of that darker color. And then I'm going to pull in towards the middle a little bit. See that? That kind of created that shadow effect. So let's do it over here. So I'm going to use a little bit of the Unbleached Titanium, just a little bit lighter color than I want to end up with. Go right up against that edge, go all the way down to my chair. Turn it around. Do the same thing on this side. Try to keep that even if we can. Let's see. Okay, I did all right. Okay, and then we're going to use that darker color. I'm just going to, I haven't cleaned my brush out at all. So my light's coming from this side, right? It's shining this way. So this side of everything is going to be lighter. This side on this side is my shadow side. So I'm going to flip this over and I'm going to go all the way down my shadow side with that darker brown. That blue, I'm just wiping this off because I have a lot of that paint in there. I'm just going to pull it in towards the middle. With my highlight side. Okay. Now if I want to get real fancy about it, I could go back in with my lighter color. I could go in the opposite direction with that. While this is all wet, it's going to really kind of blend nicely for me. I could do this while it's dry too. So if you took a while to get your rungs on here and you're like, you just didn't have time to get this darker color on there before before it started to dry, then don't worry about it. We'll do it down here. I'll show you what it's pretty much the same. So I'm going to use that same color, and I'm going to do the darker or the highlight on this. Again, our light's coming from this side, so our light's hitting these chair legs, and I'm just going to set my brush down, and I'm barely touching and lifting. This takes a little practice, so maybe practice it on paper if you want to, but I mean, I'm not pulling the brush at all with my hand. All I'm doing is setting it down and pulling it like this. Just twitching it slightly towards me with my fingers. And I'm putting pressure right here. I'm just holding it in place with my thumb, but I'm putting pressure right here on my hand just to pull it down just a little bit. And I'm not moving my hand at all up and down or side to side or any way like this. Just setting the brush down where I want it to be, almost perpendicular, and just kind of tucking it in towards me just a little bit to get that little bit of a highlight to come off. Okay, let's do it over here too.
And if you want to see a real beginner trying that technique, watch our swan video.
Yeah, from last Valentine's Day. I don't think I taught it very well to you. You just never quite got it.
Oh, that is awfully nice of you to say, but I know you know me, so it's okay to say that I'm a little dense and slow in that.
He's a little brush challenged with this one.
Yeah, art isn't my forte.
Okay, and I'm going with a little bit medium color here and just going over kind of the middle part of it with a little bit of the medium color. I went a little bit darker on this one just because it's like towards the middle of the chair, so it's not catching as much light as the one that's on the outside of the chair leg. Okay, so there we go. All right, this is kind of like dry brushing. It's not quite dry brushing because my brush is wet, but if we were going to dry brush here, let me show you what we would do. So I'm going to take this. This is dry right up in here. You need your paint to be dry. when you're doing it. I'm not going to try to get that chalk off. So I'm going to use a textured Willows blender, but you could use a flat brush or any brush that you've got that's got a little bit of stiffness. Like a stiffer bristle brush works better for dry brushing. That's just kind of how it goes. But I'm not going to add water to my brush. I'm going to leave it dry, and I'm going to pick up whatever color that it is that I want to do my highlight with. So I'm going to grab, oh, wow, that scared me. Grab a little bit of my light color here. Maybe pick up a little bit of my medium brown. And this brown, again, was just my ultramarine or my burnt umber plus this unbleached titanium. That's all that this color is. This one over here has got a little bit of the burnt sienna in it. So when you see me picking up color over here, you might, just as a disclaimer, you might want to, if you're a first-time watcher, as I do my videos, a lot of times I'll mix a color, and then later on I might use that color again, but I don't mention exactly what that color is, because a lot of times, like, I forget by the time I use it again. So you might just take a screenshot if I mix a new color somewhere, and just like mark on your screenshot, you know, what the colors are, and that way when you're painting yours later on, if I go back and grab some of that color but don't, you know, say what it is, then you won't get mad at me. I honestly, we mix so many colors, and today we're kind of keeping it simple, but when we do our more complicated projects, you know, we may have like 5 or 6 different colors out here that are, you know, each have like 3 or 4 colors in each, you know, different one, and then we're mixing other colors into those, you know, to make other colors, and it just gets real complicated. I can't keep it all straight in my head, so okay, so I'm grabbing my color. So, okay, back to the basics here. Dry brush, stiff bristles, picking up a little bit of whatever color it is I want, and I'm going to get a little bit of both colors, but I'm not like over blending it. If I went over and over again here, then I would just mix a new color, but I'm not wanting to do that. So I'm just picking up a little bit of this color, a little bit of this color, letting them kind of blend a little bit, but you can see even on my brush how you can see both of those colors on there still. So I'm going to leave it like that. It's kind of streaked, right? Streaked colors. And I'm going to, whatever direction that I want my texture to go, and in this case, it's kind of wood grain, so I'm going to go in this direction this way. I'm just going to barely set my brush down at a slight angle. Sometimes if you're using a brush and the paint's not coming off very well, you can angle your brush kind of almost flat like this, like we did when we were scraping it. But this brush, I think, will do a pretty good job. So I'm just going to barely touch it. You can see how it's going to catch on the texture of my canvas. And I'm just going to keep going and going down. I can go back over these areas if I want to add a little bit more. But see how that does? It does really beautiful. It's basically the same thing we were doing when we were scraping. We're just kind of scraping with our brush almost. Letting the texture of the bristles create these kind of lines, and it's catching on the texture of our canvas. And you're going to create this nice dry brush effect like that. Okay. Let's go ahead and do some on here. So let's go ahead and kind of add some on our chair here where the leg is, or the seat is showing. We'll give it a little highlight right there, and maybe pull down a little bit right here on the front end of it. We already kind of did this, but maybe just give it a little bit more of a highlight. You can practice on your chair seat before you do it up here even, because this isn't going to be showing, so it's a good place to practice it, right? Whatever direction that you are pulling it is kind of the direction that your wood grain is going to show. And so let's get a little bit of my dark color.
To clarify, the seat on the painting, not the one you're sitting on?
Right, right.
I would advise against that.
Right. So using a little bit of warmer tone here and pulling down to create my texture this way. Now, I could do my chair legs that way, but I didn't want to do it with this brush just because they're so straight. This brush is a little bit curved, so it wouldn't do a great job on these straight lines. It does a little bit better job when you've got a little bit of room to play with it. All right, so there we go. We've got our highlights on our chair here. Let me go ahead and put in our rungs right here. We didn't do those yet. A little bit of burnt umber, a little bit of that darker, or that light color. I'm trying to kind of match it up to this color here. And trying to get all three of these to be fairly close to the same size and the same distance apart-ish. Probably not doing a great job of it because I'm not using my ruler. If you want to, let me show you what you can do when you're doing these straight lines. Works really great. Is just use your ruler.
What?
Let's set that down. Set your brush down and just kind of use that as a guide to make sure you're getting a nice straight line. Okay. Depending on how hard you press is how wide your line is going to go. So if I want to keep my line fairly small, I can just barely press down with this brush. This is my number 4 round. If I wanted a little bit thicker line, I could press down a little harder and get it thicker. But I would say don't use a brush that is going to create a line that is thicker than you want. So even if I press down as hard as I could with this brush, it would still only give me a line that maybe is that wide, and that would be okay for this area. I'm going to go ahead and fill that in just so that I feel better about it, even though it's not going to show at all. I'll just feel better if that chair has got a seat all the way to the rungs. They're connected to something. Okay, there we go. All right, so there we go. We've got our chair. Now, you can see that I left this area a little bit darker on either side, right here and here, where it kind of connects to the area there. And actually, this one doesn't connect at all, so I'm going to... This one has got a little bit of a gap right there, so I'm just going to fill that in. Make sure that your chair kind of matches up. I'm notorious for not painting chairs very well, so
I'm not
in my
saying
defense,
anything.
I was doing it out of memory of what a beach chair would be, and I didn't have a reference photo in front of me, and it was like a lot harder than I thought it would be.
So your memory
Right.
lives in Dr. Seuss world?
Exactly. That's where reference photos, my friend. Okay, so I'm gonna use this brush. This brush is fairly dry. I'm gonna use it to kind of dry brush along here and just add a little bit of highlight just along this edge of my slats here, whatever these are. I don't know. I'm losing my words. The more I paint, the harder it is to talk. The more, when I get real concentrating on what I'm doing, it gets real difficult to talk. Try it sometimes. It's a right brain, left brain thing. The kind of creative part of your brain is not the part that you talk with. So,
see, I knew women.
Maybe not for artists. I don't know. Maybe for some people it is, but not for me.
I knew women had 2 brains.
Mm-hmm.
I only have one.
You only have one.
part of one.
Part of one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to use a little bit of this lighter color and just do a little bit more of a highlight on my chair legs, just a little bit, barely touching it. Just give it a little bit more. So there we go. It's very stylized. We're not trying to look at super realistic here. We're just kind of doing a fun little chair. I'm going to get a little bit of my white even and do a little bit of the white on this side of this guy. Go a little bit lighter. Let's do it on here too. And trying to make sure that these lines are all kind of lining up so that they're all going in the same direction there. All right, there we go. All right, so let's go ahead and put in some of our greenery. Oh, I forgot to show you this brush at the very beginning. I'm sorry. This is the 3/8 inch Deerfoot. We're going to need that. And I'm not going to add water. I almost did. I'm not going to add water to it. We used this last week, I think, with the clouds. So this is a great brush. Got lots of things that you can do with it. But greenery is one of the things. I'm going to get a little bit of water just to add to my paint. I'm not trying to get my brush soaked with it. So I'm going to add, I want to mix a dark green. And this green is way too bright on its own. It's just going to be too, vivid. So I'm just going to add some of my gray to it. And that'll darken it up. It's got that brown and blue in it. So if you wanted to, you could just mix brown and blue to this, or brown and blue to the green. Depending on how much you add to it, the darker it'll be. But in our dark areas, in the middle of our greenery, if you look at the photograph, it's almost black right in here. So we're going to start with this really dark color, and I'm just going to kind of create the boundary of where I want my greenery to be. So I'm just going to kind of do like this, and as I go out, I'm going to kind of flick my brush up and out. If I tap it, it's going to create kind of a stipple effect, like a like a bush, but if I kind of pull it, it looks a little bit more like grasses. So I'm kind of going to do a combination of both and just create my little area for my flowers on my chair. Bring it out this way. Leave some of that chair showing in between some of this. Bring it down over my chair in front here a little bit. Okay, so I've got a nice dark color here. That'll be a good base for the rest of my painting here. And I'm going to get the dark, and I'm just going to add a little bit of the really dark right in the middle there too. Just really give us a good dark base. Okay, now I'm just going to dip that brush in, but really wipe it dry. And now I'm going to grab some of my yellow. I'm going to get this cadmium yellow light, and I'm going to mix it over here with my green. And this green also has that gray in it, so it's neutralizing it a little bit, making it a little bit more of a natural color. If I didn't neutralize it at all, if I just used this green straight out the park, or mix these two together, look how bright this color is. It's like, whoa, day glow. Like fluorescent green, which we will use this later, but we're not going to use it right now. So right now we're just kind of going for a sort of medium toned green. We want to use 3 tones of green. We're going to have that darkest color, then a medium tone, and then a very light tone. So we'll have all 3. That'll make your painting have a little bit of depth, but look a little bit more realistic. So I'm going to tap and brush through this. Don't cover all your dark areas, so as you're doing this, just make sure you're leaving some of the dark showing like that. Okay, tapping, creating my greenery. Okay. And I'm just going to let that set. While that's drying, I'm going to take my wet paper towel. This should be dry. I'm going to just very lightly wipe off my chalk lines. This will make me be able to see my chair here and see what I've got going on, and see if there's anything else that I need to fix. Now, while this is drying, I'm going to go ahead and do one more thing that is just a bonus. So this is not something you have to do with yours, but if you want to take it just one more step a little bit more difficult, we're going to use an angle brush here and get a little bit of water on it, rub off the water on the side of the cup, and then I'm going to dip just the tip of the angle brush into my wet black paint, so you can see how much I'm getting there, just up to halfway maybe. And I'm going to find a clean spot on my palette, and I'm going to press down really hard back and forth just in the same spot. Don't move it around. You just want to go back and forth over the same spot, but I'm pressing as hard as I can down, back and forth, and that's going to create a gradient in my brush. So now my brush is going to have dark to light. I'll do it over here and you can see how it looks on paper. See that? That's what we're trying to create. And then we're going to take this to our canvas. I'm going to have to do a little bit more because I just took off all my moisture and my paint off on my paper, but go back and forth. Okay, so I've got my brush loaded the way I need it, and I'm going to take it and put it right up against my dark part of my chair and go straight down. Got the dark part in my shadow, so wherever I want my shadow, that's where that dark tip of my brush is going to go. See how much darker that is now? How nice that looks. I can do it on here too. I'm going to go ahead and go this way. Again, the dark shadow right up where I want it darkest. I'm going to just darken up where my chair legs are meeting up and giving a little shadow right there. Anywhere that you want a little shadow. So let's go ahead and shadow the bottom. I'm just going to use the edge of my brush now this time. I'm going to shadow the bottom of my chair thing here, and then shadow the bottom or the top right here where they meet the chair. Okay, again, totally optional. Now over here we could do it along here if we want to get real fancy with it. I'm going to get a little bit of my lighter brown because I don't want it as dark. I'm going to do the same thing. Now this time I'm going to pick up a little bit of water back here because I think I got my color all the way through. If that happens when you're mixing it, just get a little bit of water and then take it to your paper towel and just wipe off that back end where you want the clean spot to be. And I'm going to take it, oh, look at how nice that looks. Go all the way down. This is this is a little tricky. So don't do this if it stresses you out. You can try it, practice on paper, whatever. But, you know, if you're ready to, like, this is called floating. It's a decorative painting technique, but it works great for this kind of painting. See that? Okay, so now it's like really bold. It's got like really good depth. Just takes it up one more notch and gives it a little bit more depth. And I can use it anywhere else that I want it, but I think we did a good job on there. Okay, so let's go ahead and set that aside. I'm gonna, while these, it's been a while. We've been here about an hour. So I'm going to take all these brushes that I've been using and dip them back in my water and just set them off to the side here so that they don't dry out. Okay. Or so that they don't dry out. That's what I meant to say. Okay. I'm making sure I meant to say that. I did. All right. So we're doing pretty good. I think we've made pretty good progress here. While this green is still drying, I'm going to go ahead and put in some of our little stems. We're going to have all these like stems coming out of our greenery. So we talked about how to do lines in our very first lesson. I did that because on our first lesson, because lines can be one of the things that's the trickiest. And I feel like if you can get confident with doing thin lines, then the rest of this stuff is a lot less daunting. So I hope you've been practicing that if you're new to painting and you've been painting along with us for these beginner series. I've seen several people painted the last two projects and they've turned out really great. So you can share those with me on my social media. I've got links down in the description. Also, if you like these videos and want to see more of them, if you'll give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel, you can also click the little notification bell. It'll give you an email whenever we go live. Or you can just sign up for our newsletter and we'll send you an email once a week to let you know what videos we're going to be doing that week. So the newsletter is at my website. It's thankfulart.com. Or just click on my thankfulart.com. Yeah, the link to my website is down in the description as well with all kinds of other resources. So, all right, so I'm going to hold this brush way far out here. I've got my paint thinned out quite a bit. So remember, we want it kind of like milk consistency. It should be very thin. We shouldn't feel any resistance when we're dragging it through our paint. So I've loaded it up fairly thickly for this one because I'm wanting to do fairly thin lines, but I'm going quickly. I don't want to take too much time with this, so I'm just going to pull my lines. I'm going to start where the greenery is the thickest, and I'm just going to fling my brush out here and do lines until they kind of stop. I'm just flicking my brush out Not really worried too much about the direction, as long as they're all kind of going in this outward motion. So, and I'm going to pull some down, pretty far down out here. And this is going to be kind of the base for all of our yellow flowers that are sticking out on the outside. And you can see that I'm going to do it along the sides here. You'll be able to see a little bit better against the wood here. I can even get some of my brighter yellow here and use that. So I'm hoping that what we'll be doing with this project, with these projects too, these beginner series, is we'll be building up our techniques. So each week we'll be learning some new techniques, but then we'll also be kind of reinforcing the techniques that we've already learned. So this one is kind of reinforcing that, the lines that we learned how to do the other couple weeks ago. So I'm just going to do kind of a few little random grasses, and some of them are getting kind of thick, but I don't mind that. I don't care. Most of this is going to be covered up by flowers and stuff. We're just basically kind of trying to give ourselves some motion to our greenery and a base for some of these flowers to kind of live off of.
Which brush is that?
This is the 18-aught liner brush. Okay. Okay. Now I'm going to get my 1/4-inch angle shader, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the different types of... Can you take that and dry it real good for me? While he's drying that, I'm going to talk about what to do with the angle brush. So we already used the larger angle brush. You can use either one, really any size that you want. But what we're going to do, and I'm just going to use blue since we've got a lot of it and I'm not using it up. I put way too much blue out here. Okay, so there's a couple of different brush strokes that you can do with your angle brush here. I'm just getting my paint with a little bit of water in it. My paint was getting a little thick right there. Okay, so I'm going to load it by kind of pressing my brush flat on either side. I'm flipping it over, pressing my brush flat so that I've got a nice thin line right here. And I'm going to create some leaves. So you can do them a few ways. So I'm going to set my brush down so that the point is that way. I've got the small end tucked towards my hand. And I'm just going to press down and lift up. And that creates a leaf. Okay, then if I do it a little bit at an angle, it'll create a leaf this way. My brush is not sticking together very well. And I also can kind of put it sideways, pull out that way, and then pull down. So there's all kinds of different ways to do leaves with this brush. I can do a couple together. I can also do kind of a fancy spin move where I can kind of set it down flat this way and turn it, or turn it this way, either way. Hi Fitzpickle, you can hear my dog come in. So if you do the pointy side down towards you and then push that the shorter end out, you can get kind of a leaf this way, and then you can always go back in and do like that. But what we're going to do is we're going to just do like this. We're going to make our leaves by changing the direction of our brush, and we're just going to kind of let the tip create some leaves for us. And some of them are going to look more square, some of them are going to be more thin lines, but basically the whole jumbled mix of them will create that leaf feel. Your eye will kind of fill in the gaps. And then what we're going to do for our flowers is we're going to use the tip of the brush, and we're just going to face the tip straight down and plop it down. And that creates a nice circle for us. Now, you can also get circles with a round brush, but since the round brush is so tapered, unless you're using a really large round brush, a lot of times your circles will look a little bit off. So they're not actually as round as you can get with they look more oval, I should say. You can get them round, but you kind of have to do sort of 2 brush strokes together or kind of do them in a circle to get the round like this. And I've done them that way before, like when I've done berries, you know, just kind of do them in a little bit of a circle like that. But I find that this, using the angle brush, is so much faster, and just kind of dip, dab, 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 dab. And just by pressing straight down, I'm not turning it at all. I'm just pressing straight down over the top of that angle and smushing it down. And it's flaring out the outer part of that brush a little bit and creating that dot. Okay, so we're going to be using a combo of these 2 techniques, but we're going to create most of our flowers with our angle brush, weirdly enough. So, all right. And I think I'm going to switch to my larger brush just because it will give me bigger. It'll give me more, I can get more paint on it. Okay, and I'm going to mix since I've got so much of the dark green here, I'm going to start by mixing my white with some of this cadmium yellow medium, and I'm going to get just a little bit of my green here and add that to it. And adding the white is going to make it more opaque over the top of this greenery. And I'm just going to dab and create some flowers. And then I'm mixing a little bit of, I've still got that white on my brush, I'm going to mix a little bit of a kind of a warmer toned yellow here with a little bit of burnt sienna and the cadmium yellow medium, and I'm going to use that also. So I'm going to just kind of dab. And some of them are even a little bit darker. I'm going to go ahead and get a little bit more of that burnt sienna. Some of these ones that are kind of deep and in the middle of the bunch of flowers are going to have a little bit more of this warmer brown or orangey tone to them. I'm going to do those first, and then I'm going to add my lighter tones on top. Okay, you can use any color you want. It doesn't have to be yellow. So you could do these in pinks, you could do any colors you wanted, but basically you're going to have to add a little bit of white and have 3 tones. You're going to want a light, medium, and dark tone, just like we did on our greenery and our chair legs and everything else. Just basically whatever color you choose, just kind of pick a light, medium, and dark version of it to give your flowers some depth. Okay, so right at the tips of these, I'm going to make some very, very bright, vivid green. And go at the very tip of, this is the cadmium yellow light and phthalo green yellow shade. These 2 together are going to make this kind of almost neon green. I could also mix up the cadmium medium with the green if I don't have the light color, the light version, but the light version is best if you have it because it's going to give you a much brighter tone. So I'm just doing these little dots that are at the very tip of these. And I'm barely touching down. This brush is really kind of too big. I'm going to go ahead and switch back to the smaller angle. This one's just too big. Okay. There we go.
And how are you holding the brush right now?
I'm holding it right at the end here, and I'm just holding it so that the tip is facing down, and I'm barely touching it down, just creating those dabs. You don't have to have very much pressure here. Okay. Okay, and then let's go ahead and use this. Make it a little bit more of the green here, make kind of a medium color. I'm going to do some leafy, kind of fern-like leaves. So I'm going to do kind of a straight line and then do some lines along the outside, kind of barely touching down, just doing some little leafy shapes, some leaf-like. So this is doing like this, a straight line, and then going on either side of it and creating kind of almost like a fern-like leaf. And I'm not being super careful about this, but the more, the more detail that you have here, kind of all jumbled up together, it'll kind of fill in the details yourself. I wouldn't worry about any one line looking perfect or anything like that at this point. We're just kind of adding things. If you get some leaves in there that you really don't like, then just add some flowers over them. There's all kinds of ways to kind of do this. All right, so I'm going to get some of the brighter yellow now. The cadmium yellow light is just a really nice, vivid yellow. It's lighter than the cadmium yellow medium. The yellow medium has more of an orangey tone, and the cadmium yellow light has almost a green tone to it. So I'm going to mix up some of that. I'm going to have like all these colors just to kind of work with. So I'm going to kind of mix some straight yellow and then some yellows that have the white mixture. So this is the cadmium yellow medium with the white. This one's a cadmium yellow light with the white. And let's go ahead and just kind of add. My paint is globbing on here. Okay. I want a little bit of all these colors in here though, so I don't want to do just the light color. I need to have some of these darker colors in here or I won't have any contrast in my yellow. What are you laughing at?
Hashtag puppy cam.
Oh, he's stacked out right behind my chair. Oh no, that's my chair. That's the other chair. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Mark's old chair. Okay, so this is my nemesis. What I do, this is what I have to fight against when I'm doing flowers, is I will fill in every single little bit of greenery and green space with flowers. So like I really almost need to put my hand over the top of certain areas so I can't even see them, so that I'll leave some of these dark spots in here. Because you can see like this whole middle part of the greenery up there in the chair is like green and not yellow at all, and I'm already filling it in. So I need to like stay away from that and just do the yellow. Leave some green. That's what I'm saying. Do what I say, not as I do, because I'm probably going to end up with everything covered with yellow flowers. But
and you won't be able to see the chair.
Exactly. So just ideally leave some green. All right, I'm going to continue to just kind of, I'm going between the colors. I'm not really any rhyme or reason here, just getting some of the more yellow, like the more orangey yellows and using that, and then going back to the other yellow, the more light yellow, the cadmium yellow light, and using that, and just going back and forth between all these colors, just trying to add some depth.
So now do you find that these are all my questions, do you find that holding the brush further back helps keep more of a fluid, like random feel to it?
Yes, because if I was to hold it too close, I really can't get the same, and my hand's kind of almost in the way, I can't really even see what I'm doing. It's going to be more of I don't know, it's still a little bit more controlled. I want it to be a little bit more random, so it helps to do it more randomly if I don't have a death grip on the brush. I'm just holding it a little bit farther back, and my brush strokes are going to be a little bit more angled. So I'm kind of sweeping some of these flowers this way. Some of them are falling over this way. So whatever direction that I kind of do these little sweeps will kind of give these flower clusters some motion. So I'm just kind of trying to create a little bit of motion around these flowers. Some of them are kind of coming up this way and trying to taper them out, leaving some of this gray space in between so that I'm getting these like in and out motion between these flowers too. Okay, using some of the brighter yellow, cadmium yellow light just on its own, and bring that all the way up here. Got another little bit right there. Now this is where I'm going to go over the top of some of these ones that I've already got. So some of these little clusters, and just add like another little color in there. And if I need to, I can grab a little bit of white. But I'm putting this on so thickly that it's covering up the greenery. If it's not covering the greenery and you're seeing the green through your yellow, that means you need to just add a little bit more white to it. And you can always go back in and put yellow over the top of the white. But what the white will do is create a barrier between that green and your yellow so that you can see the yellow on top. Otherwise, you know, sometimes it just doesn't show up. All right, so I'm getting a good, nice, bright yellow here with my white added. Again, leaving this space green. Trying not to do that. Not to cover it too much. And at some point I need to stop, because what I'll end up doing is having so much of this yellow that you can't see any individual little round dots. And we want to be able to see the little round dots. So you want them to kind of cluster sort of towards the middle here, but then as they come out on their own, you want to create these more random dots that are on their own, kind of around, almost like floating by themselves. And ideally, they're going to have like a little bit of a green stem, so you can go back in and kind of add a little bit of a green line to some of them. Like some of these didn't have any green, so I'm just kind of going back in here and adding some green so they don't look like they're all on their own, but it's not that important. So, I mean, it looks more realistic if you do this. So, but if you're like line phobic and it's just stressing you out, just put the flowers, don't worry about it. But this will kind of make it a little bit more realistic, putting the stems to those flowers that are in there. All right, I'm going to get some of the green now. And I'm going to just do a few more leaves. So I'm going to put some leaves over the top of some of these yellow. Spots. This is where we're talking about doing those leaves that are kind of random looking. I'm going to get some of this darker green. I feel like in here we just got a lot of this lighter color and we don't have any of the darker green. So just trying to put some of that back in right there. Okay, there we go. And then I'm going to use this more medium yellow and just do some dots over this area right there, just to kind of...
Stop.
No, this is the last little bit.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not covering up all my green.
Okay.
I need this color because I don't have this color in here, so I'm going to just add some of the cadmium yellow medium.
So when they do this painting, do they have to have yellow nail polish?
No, but it makes you feel better if you do. So
Okay.
you become one with the flowers. Okay, so I missed some of these that come down here, that kind of sweep down right here. Okay, yeah, don't do any more in there. See, I'm like, oh, but there's a spot right there.
I told
Don't
you.
do it. Don't do it.
I told
I'm
you.
not.
And you're arguing with me.
No, I'm doing the yellow over the top of the places where I haven't done this, where I've already done the yellows.
Okay, so justifying your
I'm not
problem
listening.
is the first sign that there's a
This is the
problem.
problem. I already admitted it. I thought admitting it was this first step to finding a
Well,
solution.
right, but then you just keep going at it.
Okay. All right. All right. Don't look over here. I'm just gonna go like this. Don't look. I've got it
Dude.
under. I've got this.
I've been instructed to go over there and take the brush away from you.
Don't you dare. Okay. There we go. Definitely covered up a lot of the green. I did that before I realized I was doing it though. That wasn't there at the end. It was before I saw that I had done it. Okay. So I'm going to get a little bit of this darker green and I'm just going to do a few stems out here. They've got some like stems coming out the back side of the greenery. So I'm just going to do some of those. Like they're setting out there. And once this dries, you could go back in, and I could go back in and add some more of the darker greens if I wanted to, add some of that. So I might do that, just here and there, in here. Although really there's not a lot of this darker green out in this area. It's mostly kind of just in the middle here where I covered all of it up with this. So I'm just going to put some greenery. And you will see, like, with this, like some of the flowers may be like in the back here. And so the greenery might be covering over some of it. And you'll still see part of the green, part of the yellow, but not, not as much of it. So we can go back through here and add a little bit of our green. Now I think I just messed it up. I should have just left it. All right, I'm going to get some of my yellow and go back over.
Oh, we're back to the yellow again.
It's fine. I know what I'm doing.
3 hours later. Okay. So we painted a yellow canvas today. It is a pretty simple beginner. I mean, we took the long way around to making it all yellow,
It'll
but
be fine. It looks good. I like it. And what, you think did I do too many?
No, I'm just being silly.
Okay. I like it. I'm going to get my bright yellow with my white here. Cadmium yellow light with my white. And then just find some that are already there and just add a little bits of highlight to some of them.
Man, you got a real problem.
I'm adding depth here. Be quiet.
Mm-hmm.
So you want to have these bits where you can see that kind of warmer brownish yellow, and then the cadmium yellow medium, and then this brighter cadmium yellow light. And then some of it is also with the white. So I've got probably 4 or 5 tones of different yellows here that are all overlapping to create these petals. And if you've got any that, just not showing up very well, you can go back over like I'm doing here and just add a little dab of extra yellow to them to make them cover a little bit better. But if you look at your reference photo, there's all these little clusters of yellow. I'm being a little bit, actually, despite what Mark's saying, I'm doing a little bit less flowers than what are actually in these clusters, just so that I have a little bit more of that background showing. But actually in these clusters, they're all touching, so you have a whole cluster of these yellow flowers with very little definition to each one. And because I don't want to have to take each dot and make sure that it has a dark and a light side, that would be the other option to do. Is I could go back in here, like if I have an area where I don't see any depth, I could go back in and add a little bit of either a lighter or a darker tone in on top of that to create some depth in that little cluster of yellow. So if you've got an area of yellow, like I did over here where I had a whole cluster of yellow that was just all kind of the same tone, I added some green in there, and then I went back over it with some other yellows, and it kind of helped to separate out visually the yellows so that they weren't all mashed together too much, and you could actually see a little bit of depth in there. So I'm going to go in with some of the darker. And this is just kind of nitpicking, but I'm just kind of adding a little bit of, and I'm not adding really new flowers here. I'm just, again, going back into these areas and adding just a little bit of shadow to some of these. And I went just like I did just a minute ago with my highlighted color. All right, there we go. There's our chair with flowers. You do the same thing no matter what color that you decided to use. So if I used pink, I would use a deep pink for my shadows and a medium pink for most of the flowers, and then a bright white added to the pink for my highlight areas. And pretty much do the greenery the same way, and then you'll have all these really interesting different, you could do, different clusters of flowers. I'm going to just, what I'm doing here is separating out these clusters just to give them a little bit more shape, just like looking at the outer borders of them and giving them a little bit of movement. I think that's good.
So if you see a part of your canvas that doesn't have yellow on it, go for it.
Mm-hmm. A part of the canvas that doesn't have yellow on it?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm looking at the photograph, and these flowers are going almost all the way up to the top there, so I didn't do them high enough.
That's what I would say.
Didn't sound like it. Okay. Here we go. Grab my pencil here and sign it.
Okay, so somebody asked, what do you use to sign with?
This is the Pigma Sakura FB. It is we talked about it in the very first of the shows, so I talked about it a little bit more, but Sakura is a brand, and Pigma FB is, Pigma is the kind of pen that's their line, I guess, whatever, and then the FB means fine bold, I believe, or fine brush, fine brush, so it's a brush tip. But they're waterproof and light fast. So you want a light fast pen. You don't want to use Sharpie. Sharpie's not light fast. So it is waterproof, so you could varnish over it. But in a few years, your signature will disappear because if you get any light on it, it'll just fade. So always want to use a light fast pen there if you're going to use a pen at all. All right. I still want to add just a little bit of the white right there. Go for it while you're.
Alrighty, so we had a bunch of people. Thank you for joining us tonight. A lot of first timers. It was awesome.
Great.
A lot of great feedback. We had a super chatter. So for those who were first time here wondering what all the moves were, that's what it was for. Hope I need to turn off the disco lights here. The super chat was from Melody, and she says, "Thank you, Angela, for your teachings, and Mark for your humor. You both have brought so much love and beauty to my life.
Aww.
I am eternally grateful."
Wow, thank you.
Oh, thank you, Melody.
So
That's awesome.
very sweet. All right. Well, thank you guys for watching today. I hope you're enjoying this series. If you are, like I said, give it a thumbs up. Let me know in the comments if you want to see anything in particular next time, where I definitely am kind of following the comments to see if there's anything that you want to see for these beginner lessons that we're doing. I have all kinds of fun ones planned, and our new schedule is going to be coming out. Our February schedule is coming out this week, so be watching for that. We'll have all of the new videos that we'll be doing next month up in our upcoming live stream. If you go to click on my name or my photograph underneath the video, it'll take you to my channel homepage where you can see that list of the upcoming videos. It should be probably either tomorrow or the next day that they'll be up. And then Mark was showing you the patreon.com button there. That is patreon.com/AngelaFineArt is where you can get a traceable for tonight's show. Go ahead and show that again or not. Okay, there we go. We're not hitting on the right wavelength today. You're not actually listening to me live. You're listening to the replay. So yeah, the patreon.com/AngelaFineArt. I'll be doing a traceable. I take the actually finished paintings and I trace them and have those ready. And I showed how to use the traceables last week for the bird video that we did, so the sunset birds. So if you want to know how to do that and use the traceable for the chair, you can check out that video when I do the traceable. But the Patreon has all kinds of other bonus videos and things like that. So we're and the traceables are like $2 right now. 2021, they're $2 a month for unlimited access to all of the traceables. So you can download as many as you want for $2. All right, that's it. Let's get out of here. Mark's wanting to watch some Oak Island, I think. So, All right, we did good though. An hour and a half. That's what I told him I thought it would be. So we did good. I'm still talking, but he wanted me to stop like 15 minutes ago with the flowers, but no, sir. All right. What you could do though is, like, I'm not able, these flowers go on pretty juicy. They're really thick right now. But if you do get to make flowers or anything like that, you can let this dry completely, and then you can go back over it with leaves or anything else like that you want to add to it, or other colors. You could add, tuck in some other kind of flower. There's so many different ways that you could go with this chair. We're going to be doing more in this chair series too. So if you like that idea, let me know in the comments too, because I've got a blue chair I think we're going to do next month. And then I've got another chair with some pink flowers in it that I'd like to do at least 3 in this series. If you guys like that idea, let me know. All right. Let's get out of here. Thanks for watching, guys. Have a great rest of your week. We'll see you Saturday. We're going to be painting a seashell. It'll be a lot of fun. Hope you join us for that. All right. See you next time. Thanks, guys. Bye.